At Zenni, you get the same quality frame and lens options that you'd get from an optician for 1/10 of the price, including blue blockers, progressives, prescription sunglasses, and more. The best part? Try on any frame, anywhere with our 3D virtual try-on. Zenni.com. Eyewear for everyone.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. Tonight, we're here to talk about the defense from the Cowboys game. Nice win, back on track in a way. And Vas Lericos here from Baltimore Beatdown to talk with us about it. Vas, how you doing?
I cannot complain. Doing pretty well. How are you?
Yeah, can't complain either. It's nice to kind of be getting back to a normal schedule, and it's kind of weird that a Tuesday game heading into a Monday game actually seems like a normal schedule because we still got this 6-day weeks to deal with for a couple of weeks.
Discombobulated for sure. It definitely out of our normal routine, but the team got the win, first one in a while. So all things are pointing in the right direction, hopefully.
Yeah, to me, watching that game, at least, it felt like a normal NFL game this last night. The previous one felt like an exhibition game on the previous Wednesday.
Sure. A lot of practice squad players, call-ups, some fans that are not as serious, more casual fans were saying, who are these players against the Steelers? What was that, 9 or 10 days ago?
Yeah. So anyway, we move on. Good stuff. And before we go too far, we'll hear from our sponsors. All right. Well, I had some thoughts on the game. Is that the Ravens obviously clearly do not right now control their own destiny officially. Now people say, well, of course, A is going to lose to B and whatnot, and they're going to win it. But they don't, in fact, control their own destiny right now. It's a little bit disturbing, but they are close to in if they win out. Winning out will depend largely on whether or not they can win this next Monday night, which is pretty much a toss-up game. How do you see it, Vas?
I do think it's a toss-up game. It should be close. I was looking at 538's model. They give the Ravens currently a 59% chance to make the playoffs. That jumps to 85% with a win over Cleveland on Monday, drops to 32% with a loss to Cleveland. So that's a pretty big swing there. And then the remaining games are probably about 2 touchdown favorites against Cincy and Jacksonville, and probably about a touchdown favorite against the Giants. So this is the crucial one coming up.
Yeah, 53% leverage is enormous for a single game. I don't know about their model's validity. There's a lot of different playoff models out there. The DeVoa models seem to like the Ravens a little better. I'm not sure they reflect exactly who the Ravens are right now, of course, but we are who we are, and I guess we get to find out next Monday night. Slight betting favorite by -1.5 this morning, 51.9% implied win probability to win this game. Let's talk about the Dallas game, though, a little bit. That's something we can actually reflect on as far as just to project to. If we watched this game during the 1970s and the 1980s, we would have said the Ravens went into the prevent defense to close it out. A lot of very soft zone coverage with their race car package on the field to end this game.
Definitely the fourth quarter there. Even the Hail Mary at the end and the first half, Martindale sent Queen was the only pass rusher. Out of character for Martindale for sure, but as you're going to get into, I think playing a little bit more coverage or putting more people into coverage was more effective, and it's good to see Wink is able to adjust on the fly and do what's working.
Yeah, if anybody can do that, Wink, from game to game and from in-game, remarkable manager of what's going on and really understanding what's working for his defense at the time. Cowboys certainly had an onslaught of medium distance plays in this game. They had 15 passes that went for 10 or more yards. They had another couple of runs that went that way. They only had one play of 20 plus yards, and that was that 4th and 19 conversion in the final minute. That was a 28-yard play. That was their only play. When I looked at this, they allowed 29 first downs in this game, which is tied for the 8th most in team history. 3 times they've allowed 29, 7 times they've allowed between 30 and 33, which is the all-time high. But what's remarkable about it is that with 28 non-penalty first downs, the Cowboys still only had 388 total offensive yards. Think about it. You need 10 per first down, right?
Sure. It was a little bit odd. I think they were really, really attacking the Ravens down that left sideline, and they were finding some space between the zones in the middle of the field. 20 of their first downs were by the pass, 8 by the run. I think, in a way, you have to give Dallas some credit here. Kellen Moore, their coordinator, called a good game. And Dallas, I mean, they have a lot of talent. They really do on the offensive side of the ball. They've invested so many resources. And even without their 2 high-paid offensive tackles and Prescott down, they still have tremendous resources invested at wide receiver and running back. And even a couple of their both of their starting offensive guards were day 2 picks in this game. So they weren't necessarily a team to walk over by any means.
Yeah, that offensive line was in shambles. I would have really appreciated if the Ravens defense had been able to do more against them, particularly with the application of some scheme. And we'll get into a little bit more about that when we talk about the pass rush. A little disappointing that they lost the snap count as badly as they did, 77-54. Obviously, in this game, not good. I give some of the credit to Dallas. I give some of the blame to the Ravens not really getting it after it. But when they tried to get after it, that really did not work as well. And we'll talk about that some. But I'll just spoil this a little bit by saying when they rushed 5+, the Ravens gave up 9.4 yards per play.
The Ravens gave up some long drives, 12-play, 6-minute drive in the second quarter, a 9-play, 4-minute drive, another 12-play, 5.5-minute drive in the third quarter, and a 12-play drive in another one in the fourth quarter. They lost time of possession by 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't get off the field, a lot of that, and it wasn't just third down. In fact, third down was almost one of their better downs. They allowed the Cowboys to convert 6 of 15 on third down. Then subsequently, they converted 3 more of those on fourth down. So it's really like 9 of 15 when they got to that point. But that 60%, while bad, certainly by NFL standards, wasn't nearly as bad as giving up 20 conversions on first and second down. That's where they really got killed. And the Cowboys just had an easy, pitch and catch throw system going out. A lot of it, as you mentioned, in front of Anthony Averett on that left sideline.
Surely. So Averett, not his best game. We'll see when Jimmy Smith can return. This game, I'll be honest, I earmarked this as one of 2 potential losses way back in August when everybody was healthy and you didn't know, because Dallas matches up pretty well. I thought that the Ravens, optimistically, probably going to lose to the Chiefs and the Cowboys. Obviously, things turned out differently, but when you have 3 elite corners and you lose one and you're going up against a team with probably still the best wide receiver group from top to bottom in the league, they're going to find some space occasionally.
Right. So anyway, I think the Ravens did a pretty good job of minimizing the damage on the big plays. Obviously, while they did have a lot of medium distance plays, they still only averaged 5.7 yards per pass. And if we look at that, we see Joe Flacco. It's honestly a level of offense which is not acceptable. And they did turn the ball over once in 49 tries. It's just everything has a very high denominator in that passing game. And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of really big negative events that drive defenses to get off the field. They had a lot of average kind of plays, which kept drives going.
Sure, that makes sense. It was kind of easy in a way. A lot of it was easy, but they weren't taking a lot of high-risk plays necessarily.
All right, well, we got some good news today. Some more folks coming back, and they're big names: Mark Andrews, Matthew Judon, and maybe a little bit lesser known one, but Will Holden, who had played well at right tackle for one half, like a lot of people have, by the way, for the Ravens this season, it seems, comes back, and he'll be on the practice squad initially, has one more free call-up. Then I think he may be an answer. First of all, at right tackle, I think he might be the best answer, but I'm almost certain he's the best answer at left tackle if anything were to happen there.
Sure. Definitely need some stability, maybe at right tackle. Maybe he can lock down that job and being a natural tackle. The big one to me is really Andrews, and obviously Judon against a power run team like Cleveland should definitely help. But Andrews, just notably, Cleveland has allowed the second most production out of any team in the NFL to the tight end position this season. I think that's a matchup that G-Row can look to target. 2 more notes on that game before we move on. Trends that kind of favor the Ravens. The Ravens are 10-2 straight up in December over the last 3 seasons, and 11-3 straight up on the road.
Well, they're not going to look past this game. This is the only game, and you mentioned the leverage implied. This Harbaugh will be able to get them up for this game. That's not the problem. The problem is the Browns will also be up for it. Mm-hmm. The Browns have had a little more time to rest up here. They'll have everything they've got, and they'll be pushing all their chips in the pot in the same way. The Browns are still likely to make the playoffs even if they lose this game. The Ravens, as we've indicated earlier, there's a much greater chance that the Ravens will be impacted in terms of in or out if they were to lose this game.
Sure. Going to require a team effort and definitely some good play calling and some good game planning on both sides of the ball.
All right, let's move on and talk about some of the other defensive elements here, because I thought the biggest element from this game was the return of the Monstars. All 3 defensive linemen healthy for the first time since week 8 for a full game. And Williams and Wolf both had terrific games. I want to talk about each of them, but unfortunately, Campbell did not seem to be moving particularly well.
Absolutely not. He looked downright slow. Lateral agility was definitely lacking. COVID complications, perhaps. He is asthmatic. Also, calf strain for a 300-pound, 6'8", 34-year-old man. Might be a little tough to recover from. 23 snaps, well below his normal share. Maybe, again, on the bright side, maybe it's just a ramp-up period.
Yeah, I think they definitely managed his snaps, and I would have said the same for Williams. Wolf, they fed him 62 snaps in this game. He's a workaholic. Apparently very happy to do it. Wolf had just a marvelous game, so much that went perhaps unnoticed. We had 9 tackles. Now, 9 tackles for a defensive lineman is an extraordinary total. That's a very high total. The number of times Haloti Ngata, for example, would have had 8 tackles in a game would have been less than a dozen in his career, maybe more like 8 games in his career. Wolf, 9 tackles, 8 of them were defensive wins, meaning they were, by the Football Outsiders definition, they were less than the required yardage dependent upon the down and distance for that situation. That's just a huge number. We saw him contributing to the goal line. And then more importantly, maybe in the pass rush, he contributed to 2 of Judon's events, both the sack, where he was the looper who allowed Judon to get home. Ward to get him. Did I say Judon the first time too?
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, so
I know you're talking about.
and the second time, he was the underneath player who created a very clear and easy lane for Ward to get home. So Ward's big game, he owes significantly to Wolf as well.
Wolf was terrific. He really was. Almost all of his tackles, as you said, were 2 yards within the line of scrimmage, right at the line of scrimmage. Had a big tackle for a loss. He's just very disruptive, beating his man, getting into the backfield. I think this was probably Wolf's best game as a Raven to date.
Yeah, without question in my mind, it certainly was. And next to him on the line, great to have Brandon Williams back. Did not have a real extensive game. I forget it was 25 or 27 snaps, but 2 big penetrations on the goal line stand. And that's probably the least he did. But it reminded me how little we've seen in terms of penetration as opposed to just reactive attempting to hold your ground versus double teams that we've seen the last few weeks. And Ellis has worked his heart off these last few weeks. He's just worked his tail off to try and make things happen, but he just is not as talented as Brandon Williams when it comes right down to it. We saw a lot of that.
Ellis played a lot of snaps, almost as many as Brandon in this game, but Brandon was seemingly making plays in spurts where he would take over for 2 and 3 plays at a time. He also had a deep penetration to blow up a run early in the third quarter. Definitely one of his better penetrating games, or as far as that. He also had the as you mentioned or noted, the uncalled intentional grounding. He had a hold that started a drive, and then he tipped that pass. The clean reception, he really timed that play perfectly, when to shoot his hands up and get into that throwing lane.
Yeah, I mean, we've often gotten on Brandon Williams for not getting meaningful pressures, but he really made both of his pressures count in this game. The intentional grounding one, I mean, that really should have been effectively a sack. It would have been a loss of down and a big loss on the play. And then, of course, the tip ball was one of the very biggest plays of the game. So he's certainly one of the guys I looked at as starring in this game. And boy, it's great to have those three back on the field. It's just a night and day to
Definitely.
have those defensive linemen.
And both the rookie defensive tackles, Matabike and Washington, were healthy scratches in this game, which I thought was interesting. I would expect one, if not both of them, to dress on Monday.
Yes, I think they'll go to five defensive linemen. And I think they certainly probably need to go to 5 if Campbell is not vastly improved in terms of his health.
Sure.
Ravens have some choices to make coming up in terms of the roster. Now, they've got a lot of players coming back now from the COVID list, and they've had a lot of flexibility to bring up basically whoever they wanted from the practice squad. But now they have some more difficult choices to make. So Chris Moore is coming back, or he's available. He can actually be activated, I believe, as late as the 25th of December, if the Ravens choose to hold it off. But you wonder now about certain positions and whether or not Moore might, foreshadow the end of Des Bryant in Baltimore. Des Bryant is, he obviously very emotionally made the statement that he's not going to play again. I don't really believe that. I think he'll want to finish the season. But I think there is a real question as to whether the Ravens would prefer at this point to have Moore or Bryant on the roster.
Sure. We'll see how that plays out. It's hard to keep track of all the roster maneuvers lately. It really is with the COVID list and the call-ups and the short-term IR. I thought Moore was back for this game. It's a lot to keep track of. We're usually pretty on top of it, but I've never seen anything quite like this season.
No, I agree. Never have. I mean, they brought Averett back, and that really took away a roster spot that is currently for a COVID player who's going to be back. And we did see this week that TCC got deactivated, Tristan Colon-Castillo, and a lot of people were shocked by that. It's just like the most surprising thing that's ever happened. A guy who played okay for one game is now not available. But the Ravens have more choices they need to make. And they really have, honestly, remarkable depth on that offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're talking about the defense today, but let's just talk about this while we're here. It's December. There's COVID going on worldwide. There's a bunch of players who opted out for the season, and the Ravens still have 11 to pick 10 or 10 to pick 9 on the offensive line. They did release Rodgers, who they picked up as tackle depth, but they have Holden now coming back, and they have to make some choices now about who's active in particular, but also just even who's on the 53-man roster. Sure.
Well, the benefits of continuing to stack the depth chart in the middle rounds with offensive linemen year after year and working that waiver wire as DaCosta does so well.
Yeah. All right. Well done. The only guy I see who's obviously, probably in danger of losing a spot is Christian Welch at this point. The inside linebacker core seems solid. I don't think they can keep a spot for him for a special teams player at this point any longer. I think they're going to have to use that to make room, whether that's Moore or whether that's another player coming back that they need to bring on. It doesn't really matter which goes for which. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to spend this $10 on this, as opposed to I'm going to throw it on the pile and then I'm going to pick from that pile at a later point.
Well, the special teams, and I know this is a defensive podcast, but they were a little bit sloppy. So I think Moore coming back should be helpful.
Yeah, you're actually probably should lend impetus to that. Let's talk briefly through packages now in terms of what the Ravens played in this. The Cowboys ran 77 snaps, and the Ravens really ran a different set of packages than they've been running. In some ways, this was kind of a relief because it was a game where they had a choice to fall back into a familiar friend from 2019 that we'll get to. But we'll start off with the jumbo package with 3 defensive backs. They didn't play that at all during the game. And you might have noticed this, but I'm sure some folks out there didn't. When the Cowboys got down to the 4-yard line, in fact, for all of their goal-to-go snaps, the Ravens had the standard nickel defense on the field. The Cowboys put 11 personnel on the field, 3 wide receivers, and the Ravens put just 2 defensive linemen on, and we're having to stop all of those plays from the 1-yard line with just 2 linemen. And normally you see 4 heavies lining up and going right at it with 2 outside linebackers flanking them and 2 safeties flanking them. And you got inside linebackers that are hopping the pile. Not the case here. They went all with the standard nickel defense inside the 4-yard line.
That's the benefit of a Brandon Williams, really. He allows you to get away with something like that. And also with just the way Dallas runs their scheme with those rub routes, I don't think you want to get caught with the linebacker or somebody trying to match up with one of their receivers.
Yeah, that's a good point. You really do want defensive backs on their wide receivers, and when they finally did get it done, you really saw Amari Cooper's a move put on Humphrey. That's a move that's a number one wide receiver move. Is all I can say is one hard step firmly in the ground, cut back towards the posts, and got easy separation there. I look at that. I wish we had a receiver who I really thought had that ability to juke somebody right off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, sure. I think that was actually Peters because Humphrey was on Lamb in the slot, if I recall. But yeah, and Gallup's touchdown also. Gallup was the one where he drew a PI on Humphrey in the end zone, which could have went either way. But that's tip your hat. It's a good play.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That was Peters. Okay, let's move on here. The base package, the Ravens played it 9 times in this game. Now, the Cowboys didn't play a whole lot of 12 and 13 personnel, but when they put it out there, the Ravens put the base package out there. They put a little bit with 2 tight ends, and it was primarily base, 9 plays, 47 yards, 5.2. By the way, it was all kind of lukewarm water here, and there's nothing wrong with giving up 5.2 yards a play in the NFL if it's some set package. So, I didn't see anything wrong with this. I thought the Cowboys' 2 tight end look actually was something that could have given the Ravens some trouble given what they have in the middle of the field.
Sure. They did have some trouble in the middle of the field. We'll get to that. I think this is where Ferguson saw most of his snaps in this, or I guess at least some of his snaps. And I thought Ferguson played pretty well, starting to set the edge a little bit better and making some things happen. As part of that base with Judon, without Judon, you need somebody to step up there.
Yeah, the play for Ferguson that I really wasn't very happy with him. I'm generally very happy with what Ferguson's become as a run defender. I think he's greatly improved. But what I didn't like was on the Cooper reverse. Ferguson did not get the proper depth on that play. Okay. And he stayed at the line of scrimmage. He had great backside discipline. So he was ready to contain Elliott, but only Elliott. He didn't get the depth proper to contain Amari Cooper. And when you see those plays blown up on the backside, those reverses, it's always because that defensive edge player gets the proper depth to make there be no escape for that wide receiver coming around on the reverse. So unfortunate on that play, and he was the only defense on that edge, which led to about a 10-yard run, I think, on that play.
Very good.
All right, let's move on. Jumbo nickel here, 5 snaps. They used that primarily against 11 personnel on first and second down. Again, 5 plays, 26 yards, 5.2. Standard nickel, 26 times. That was effective. They used that essentially against 11 personnel. The Cowboys' main 3 wide receivers played the bulk of the snaps, but they also had a couple other guys contributing a small percentage of snaps. So it worked out. They used 2.81 wide receivers per play, which is almost like playing 11 personnel every down. And when they had that 11 personnel on the field, the Ravens had the standard nickel a good amount until they went to the race car later. So 26 plays, 116 yards, 4.5 yards per play in the standard nickel. Good defense. The numbers bolstered a little bit by the fact that they were playing standard nickel in the goal line.
Sure, and I thought it was notable that Humphrey was exclusively, unless I missed a play or two, in the slot. He did not line up outside in the nickel. I thought perhaps Averett would take some nickel or slot snaps. He did not. Whether it was Lamb or Cooper in the slot, Humphrey was always in the slot.
Yeah, that's right, and it's kind of surprising. A couple of things going on is, one, they didn't do any follow. Now, they have awfully good receivers, and I don't think it does a lot of good to follow. But if you want to follow Amari Cooper, I wouldn't have minded with that. If you wanted to follow Lamb, I wouldn't have minded with that. It's just, I'm not sure it matters too much because of who they are. But the Ravens kind of committed themselves to zone defense, particularly once they got the lead in this game, and they're really playing a very soft. Let's not give up big plays in this game kind of defense, and that's what we saw, regardless of the personnel on the field. They were willing to go to a zone concept of some sort to stay out of the big play.
Absolutely. And you did not see very much pressing at the line at all in this game.
No, absolutely right on the money. The Ravens played 3 snaps of an alternate base package, and I've been trying to figure out some of these packages, which I've never seen before this year. And part of what's happening is that Martindale is really treating Board as a safety.
Mhm.
So when he puts 3 inside linebackers, 2 defensive linemen, 2 outside linebackers, and 4 defensive backs on the field, but one of the defensive backs is Chris Board, what he's really doing is playing big nickel in a way. If you think of Board as being a third safety in that package. And they were effective in that they did a good job. It was all on first down versus 12 personnel, and they had 3 plays for -1 yards with that package on the field. So he's found some creative ways to use Chris Board.
Board saw a season high 37 snaps, quite a bit, quite a few. He's really taken pretty much all of Levine's work in a way.
Yeah, he has. And when they went to the race car dime later in this game, which they played 21 snaps of race car nickel in this game. Let me explain again what I mean by that. The package includes 1 defensive lineman, 1 inside linebacker, and 4 outside linebackers together with a standard nickel secondary. Now, what they're really doing there with their inside linebacker, in every single case of these 21, it was Chris Board, who is really like a third safety on the field, or a proxy safety, as I've been calling him. That's an extra player that Martindale believes in his coverage skills, and he took Patrick Queen off the field in all of those cases. Pretty substantial reduction in snaps for Queen to play this, the best chance that he thought they had to play solid zone defense against the Cowboys.
Sure, and that's the advantage of Chuck Clark, relaying the signals as a safety, not an inside linebacker. I think that long term, I think that's still the best strategy, is going to be a safety moving forward.
Okay, I agree completely with that, but you're talking specifically about the flexibility to play or not play any inside linebacker on any down, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I completely agree with that. They play the rush nickel, 10 snaps. We don't need to go into that too much, but that's with 3 outside linebackers on the field, and they were effective in that. There wasn't any package that the Ravens really got beat on. The worst was 6.3 yards per play in this race car. And like I said, they were playing very loose zone coverage at that point, allowed a fair number of medium distance plays. They played 3 snaps a dime, all at the end of each half. So that 1-man pass rush that they tossed out there was a nice opportunity for Patrick Queen to get pinballed around the edge of that pocket.
And they dropped Wolf into I guess as a spy or something.
It's odd choice there. I mean, I do trust Queen to chase down a guy once he has the ball. He's got plenty of experience doing that. I just don't. He won't be much of a coverage asset. But if his only job is to keep Elliott, who was kept in the block on that play, in front of him, I'm sure he could have handled that. All right. Well, lots of fun there. So we're through the packages. Talk a little pass rush now?
Sure.
Okay. So Martindale dialed back a lot of the pass rush in this game. Dalton had ample time and space, first of all, on 17 of 49 dropbacks. That's 35%, a little higher than average, but not much. It's really right about average. But he also delivered the ball before pressure could develop on 19 throws. So you take the 17 plus the 19, it gives 36, and you're left with only 13 actual pressure events that the Ravens generated in 49 dropbacks. That's a very disappointing total, given what the Ravens brought to the table in terms of their pass rush relative to the Cowboys' not completely cohesive offensive line.
Sure, it was. Daniel Reese had a conversation with him, and apparently entering this game, Dalton had the 5th quickest time to release ball out quick, as you say, in the league. So he's known for that. It was a tough game for Bowser, I thought. Didn't have a great game. Lost his footing on quite a few plays. Mm-hmm. But on the bright side, they were able to crank up the pressure in the fourth quarter, where it was almost no pressure at all. And then the last 2 drives, they started to collapse the pocket on a more frequent basis.
Yeah, so Jihad Ward had 3 consecutive quarterback hits at one point. On the very first play of the fourth quarter, he had that sack. And that was all, by the way, once they went to the race car. So once they had their 4 outside linebackers on the field, they were really in hunting mode and taking chances. You made a great point there about Dalton and his time to throw, because I was not aware actually that it had been that low for the year. I just looked at this last week, and this against the Ravens, he was 2.89 seconds time to throw, which is fairly long. That's up towards the longer end of the league. whereas Roethlisberger the week before was 221, and Rivers has been down in the 230s against the Ravens. Those are the guys who really get rid of the ball quickly. There was time for pass rush. There was time for stunting in this game, and the Ravens actually did it reasonably effectively in terms of what they did.
Definitely, Ward and Wolf combined for the stunting. That was definitely the most effective part of the pass rush. Definitely throughout the game, and again, it was without maybe as many quality cornerbacks or proven cornerbacks. I think maybe that was one of the reasons why Wink dialed it back a little bit, because that's what unlocks the defense and allows you to send extra rushers when you're a little bit more confident in your coverage on the back end.
There you go. Ravens rushed 5+ on 16 of 49 dropbacks. That's 33%. That's well below their season average. So it was definitely a we'll rush the guys at the line of scrimmage game more than not. And, Wink did some blitzing, and the Ravens obviously have had the strength to drop Bowser from wherever along the line of scrimmage to create an extra coverage player that has real value. But the Ravens didn't go crazy with scheme in this game, despite the fact that they had long opportunities to hunt, particularly towards the end of the game. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. 11 blitzes from off the line of scrimmage. Only 3 of those were by DBs. Now, Martindale, when he's really going after it, he sends a DB from wherever he wants to, including the game earlier this year when they had sacks from 5 different DBs to set a record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with just a few I only counted maybe 2 or 3 A-gap blitzes from the linebackers, and then a couple slot blitzes, but it wasn't definitely not up to what he usually does.
Yeah. Humphrey declared early on one even, so it wasn't. I didn't even count it as a blitz, but he came off as slot receiver, then went back, then came up. Kind of a weird situation there. They did stunt 10 times in this game. 3 of those resulted in pressure events: a sack, a quarterback hit, and a pressure. The sack and the quarterback hit both by, let's get it right, Ward, and both the sack and the quarterback hit, as we talked earlier, were delivered on stunt help that was created by Wolf. Cannot get away from how valuable he is. Campbell brings a lot of those same qualities to the field, and a healthy Campbell would do an immense amount to make the Ravens a lot harder to handle. Not to mention the return of Judon is going to be terrifically valuable in terms of having a player with the quickness to taking advantage of stunts and blitzing even from off the line of scrimmage, where he can best take advantage of a gap.
Judon's almost like a chess piece on defense at times, the way Wink uses him.
Lots of ability to move around, lots of ability to cover, and certainly has the ability to position himself off the line of scrimmage and either cover or rush from there. We've seen it. And then Bowser's been used in a similar way, and frankly is the best coverage linebacker on the team. It's really rare that you get to a point where there's no inside linebacker, including the guy your defensive coordinator is playing as a safety, who's even nearly as good a coverage player.
Sure. Great point.
Let's see. They had 12 times they dropped 2+ from the line of scrimmage to cover, 1 sack, 1 quarterback hit, 1 pressure among those. So all in all, a good game for average pass result and a bad game for getting good pressure results, despite the fact they picked it up a little bit in the fourth quarter with the race car. They really were having a terrible game up to that point, and then had some pressures in Q4. I don't think it'd be wrong to be concerned about the pass rush, but I will say this. I don't think they're also taking full advantage, certainly what Campbell can do. They didn't have Judon here to take advantage of some of the space Ngakoue creates. I know you want to talk about Yannick a little bit at some point, but he's a player who fans out that tackle and creates a lot of B-gap space on that side. And you can use that for all sorts of different schematic ploys, whether you're going to rush off the slot, you're going to rush a linebacker, you're going to stunt, whatever it might be. Awesome opportunities are created by space if your outside linebacker has the quickness to fan out the tackle aggressively snap after snap. Absolutely.
Ngakoue, he has that speed rush. I guess he and Bowser to some extent, but he's really the one that brings that speed rush. And if you don't just try to lay him around the pocket, he's probably going to cause some pressure more times than not.
Yeah, they did a really good job. Dallas did a really good job at left tackle of fanning him, of blocking him 12-6 in this game. I thought, meaning blocking him around the edge of the clock, the edge of the pocket, rather than allowing him to do the damage personally. It's funny because Maureen and I watch these games, and we're trying to get the numbers of the players as we go. It would be annoying as hell to watch a football game with us if you're anybody else, because we're constantly stopping the remote and saying, go back and forward, and we're recording the players as we go. So what we'll often notice is that Ngakoue seems to be in a very favorable position to make a play. And it goes, oh, looks like Ngakoue's going to get a strip sack here. And then he'd be just pushed back by a foot or two beyond the reach of Dalton's arm. And it was just it was a bummer to keep seeing that happen in this game.
I agree with that completely. I thought actually you were going to say it's hard to pick up the number on his jersey because of the way he bends around the edge. Because that's true too. When I'm watching the game and I write it down by number, who's doing what, and he's more than any other player. I have to rewind and say who was that again because I can't see the number on the jersey.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks that go into this if you do this, but I'll say this. Vas, we are lucky to be fans of the Baltimore Ravens. I would have already either put a bullet in my head or at least not be doing this if I were a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and those unreadable freaking jerseys for the Miami Dolphins or probably about 10 other teams. But there's a lot of very hard to read jerseys in the NFL. Unfortunately, the Ravens are nice and easy to read numbers when they're not in the color rush.
Oh, for sure.
Before we get started, if growing an e-commerce business is your focus, you'll need a platform that's focused on growth. That's where Klaviyo comes in. Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all kinds and all sizes. Whether you're just getting started or running a well-known brand, it gives you everything you need to send memorable branded emails, text messages, and more so you can build strong relationships that keep your customers coming back. With flexible automations, powerful insights, and super precise targeting, Klaviyo is a faster way to turn great ideas into great customer experiences. That's why it's trusted by more than 40,000 brands like Living Proof, Huckberry, and 8 Sleep. In fact, on average, Klaviyo customers see a 41% increase in overall revenue within 5 months. Klaviyo scales with you, so you never have to switch. They support everything from garage startups to iconic billion-dollar brands. Want to learn more about how you can grow your brand with Klaviyo? Visit klaviyo.com/grow to get started with a free trial today. That's klaviyo.com/grow.
Who are you texting?
My therapist.
You text with your therapist?
Text, video chat, call. Yep.
That sounds too easy. How did you find her?
I just went to betterhelp.com/save. She's a licensed therapist and it's all online. I connect when it's convenient for me and don't waste time driving anywhere. Plus, it's affordable.
I wonder if I should try it.
It's great to talk to someone in confidence. She's helped me sort out quite a few things. And right now you save 10% off the first month when you go through betterhelp.com/save.
betterhelp.com/save. Got it.
All right. Well, let's talk some individual players here. So, Vas, you're the guest. Why don't you go first? Pick a player you'd like to talk about, what you saw from him, and we'll kind of have a back and forth.
I want to start with Ward because I think he was the MVP of this game. This was his first action since week 6. He hasn't played since week 6, which I know he was a healthy scratch a few times. I was surprised it's been quite that long. For reference, Ngakoue was acquired in week 8, so I think that's had something to do with it. As we remember from last year, he started earning more snaps as an edge setter, but this game he was really effective as a pass rusher. 4 quarterback hits, and really what was important was he forced 2 field goals on consecutive drives on third down. They ended up missing them both. The Ravens were having a hard time getting off the field, and he was the man that got them off the field.
Right. So he had the pressure on that 3rd and 8 against Williams, and this was just a bull pressure where Dalton threw incomplete in the end zone to Gallup. Mm-hmm. That's the one from 33 yards, and I think that was third down, but I might be wrong. That might have been second. But either way, they got off the field then. The other thing that I really liked is he got pressure in a variety of ways in this game. So I mentioned the bull pressure just now. He had a stunt where he was the over guy. He had a stunt where he's the under guy. And then we really saw Q4 748. Take a look at the spin move he puts on the right guard McGovern. Mm-hmm. That was it was quite an interesting thing to see. And then he finished up with a cleanup quarterback hit, and I'm fine with that. Obviously, Bowser got the pressure on that play, moved Dalton around, but he finished it up with a takedown. And even though he got those 3 straight quarterback hits, they got a 4-yard play on 3rd and 4 to complete that play. So 3 straight quarterback hits, and the Cowboys still got 10 yards in that sequence.
One of those games, as you said, Brandon Williams had 2 consecutive goal line stops, really 3 if you watch even first down, and then they ended up getting a touchdown on 4th down. But one of those games, as long as they get the W, I guess.
Yeah, and it's more important, I think, as I'm sure you do, that what it says about what they can be as a stunt team and how much pressure he can put out of the race car package. But the Ravens, obviously, they've had tremendous problems getting pressure from any kind of interior defensive lineman. Now, that's not exactly what Ward is, and this point comes up often because the Ravens still list him as a defensive end on the roster when he's clearly an outside linebacker. But he's an outside linebacker in the same mold as McPhee, someone who kicks inside and plays with a hand in the dirt, and that's where all this pressure came from. He didn't have any. I don't believe he had even a single pressure that was as a standing outside linebacker. I might be wrong about that. With the Q3 916 pressure he had on the bull rush. I might be wrong, but I believe it was all from that inside, what I'll call the number 2 spot. It's not actually a 2 tech, but it would have been like one of 2 3 techs on the play.
Yeah, I marked it down as 3 tech. You're a little bit more precise, I think, in that regard. And we've seen McPhee do that. Zadarius Smith used to take that alignment a couple years back. And that, interior pressure, especially against these quarterbacks get the ball that quick, interior pressure is more valuable than edge pressure a lot of times.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, my turn to pick a player. Let's do it. I'm going to go with Brandon Williams. Just an outrageously good game here. I think we talked about him a little bit. The amount of contributions he had in a relatively small number of plays, basically he made a big play about every 4 plays he was on the field. And I can't overstate I don't think you can overstate the importance of having him back and how it impacted the run game. This week, they faced a Dallas run game that wasn't projected to be particularly good. Zeke hasn't had a good season. The offensive line is in tatters. But next week, they're going to face the offensive line of offensive lines against Cleveland. They've lost, even in week 1, when they had Campbell, when they had Williams, when they had Wolf all active. They lost the defensive line battle that week. And they lost it on the offensive line as well. This is a very big physical team that they're going to need to win at least one side of the ball. They can't depend on Lamar Jackson basically bailing them out with 4 out of 27 ample time and space opportunities, but a 152 passer rating.
Great point. Wow. What a disparity there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Williams is very important. He always has been. He always will be, especially in this kind of matchup. I believe, and I could be wrong, but the Browns star offensive guard Davis, Wyatt, I believe his name is.
Wyatt Teller?
Teller.
Yeah.
I think he's on the COVID list I saw. Just came across the wire maybe yesterday.
Wow.
But that's neither here nor there. And who knows if it's he's going to miss a game or if it's one of those 2 or 3 day deals. But we'll see.
Yeah, he's one of the best linemen in the league. And they lost, I guess it was Schwartz to Kansas City. And I don't remember, it may be 2 years ago now, or it may have been just this last year. But when they lost him, it left a hole. And then Teller comes along, and immediately in his first year or two, he's the best player on that offensive line.
Breakout year this year for sure. Yeah, it's he's been all pro level this year for sure.
All right. Your turn.
Okay. Let's go to Pernell McPhee. Great to have him back. He had a tackle for loss that they didn't credit for in the game book, but he certainly tackled, I believe it was Elliott, behind the line of scrimmage, where he just used his hands to rip around the edge and shot into the backfield. Also had a nice QB hit on the final drive, actually similar to the one he was flagged for, with a hit right at hip level, right as the ball was being released. But he had multiple pressures. I don't know. I'm a big McPhee fan. He's one of my favorite players. I think he kind of embodies what the Ravens are, and it's really great to see him back out there and playing well.
Yeah, I love him too. I mean, he's had a stretch here at midseason where when healthy, he's played extremely well and been delivering a lot of pressure, not always with a whole lot of help, but he's definitely one of the pieces down the stretch that the Ravens can really choose to maximize. When he was here on his first stint, he was a guy who early on in his career, in fact, in 2012, his second year, they played him very sparingly, but they brought him in basically in the second half of that AFC Championship game, and he took the game over. And I'd love to see that kind of snap management if it could be done. He makes it difficult because he's the Ravens' best run defender on the edge right now.
True. I mean, when you look at it, they have 5 capable outside linebackers in a way. You'd like to see it, but again, as you said, he's the best. I guess Judon's maybe the second best. And unfortunately, it's just the way the roster is constructed because he is an excellent pass rusher when his snaps are limited.
What do you do this next week in terms of setting your 48-man roster from the 53 in terms of the outside linebacker core?
I was gonna go on a quick tangent when we got to Ngakoue because I heard I called a minute of sports talk radio this afternoon, and Vinny Serrato was I guess half jokingly was saying they should deactivate Ngakoue against Cleveland because there's such a run heavy team that goes with play action. I don't agree with that. He's the best pass rusher, pure pass rusher on the team. I counted him he had a good handful of pressures in this game. He's not getting home. He's not getting home. He had 1 tackle in this game on 56 snaps. But I was going to actually see what your thoughts were there.
Well, let's start with this. I don't think Yannick Ngakoue is the kind of player who shows up in the stats sheet unless he's getting the sacks and forced fumbles. But he is in on pass rush downs more than run downs. So if Vinny was serious about this, he should have just said they should only play him on pass downs. That would have been a reasonable choice of words there, because there's plenty of times and I really don't like him out there on rundowns at all. And generally speaking, they don't put him out there on first down unless the other team runs a no huddle off a conversion. So it's not they don't ever put him out there. Martindale's very aware of what his capabilities are, and he's got better edge defenders. He also needs to find playing time for Ferguson. For Ferguson and McPhee to be out there on first down makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense for Ngakoue. But to say that Ngakoue is not helping the team in terms of pass rush, that's silliness.
That's out there. I mean, some people only watch the stats, and just like they've devalued Judon's contributions in the past, and others because they're not getting 12 sacks, 15 sacks, 3 sacks a game every game. Pressures are more valuable than sacks sometimes.
Yeah, pressure is more valuable. In the case of Judon and Bowser, they completely drive the Ravens' pass rush scheme by allowing them to drop to coverage. They have far more incremental value. I actually think that Judon, when he gets to play with Ngakoue, is going to explode. Now, so far, let's see, Judon lost essentially a game after a few snaps against Pittsburgh because he got ejected, and he's been on the COVID list. So it really, he's been at a point where I guess he's missed 2 straight with COVID, right? For Judon?
Yes.
Yeah. So he hasn't played a lot with Ngakoue yet, and he hasn't played at all with Ngakoue against a team that's actually vulnerable to the rush that doesn't get rid of the ball quickly. That's going to happen these last 4 weeks. And he's got a real opportunity to wreak some havoc. And I think that he should have that opportunity to do so, playing with Ngakoue, playing with some of the stunt capabilities of Wolf and hopefully Campbell as well, to create some big pressure opportunities.
Indianapolis, that game, probably the best defensive performance of the year, at least one of them. And both the edge rushers played well, made some impact plays in that game.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right. Is it my turn here in terms of another player?
Yes.
All right. Who do I want to talk about? How about Patrick Queen? So they reduced his snaps in this game and had him on the field. And I do not have the snap total in front of me, so I might need your help picking this out here. I'll take it from the game book. I can give it to you from there, which is going to be a little bit higher than what I have in an article. But Queen played, let's see, 52 snaps in this game out of 79 defensive snaps as the game book adjudicates them. So he missed 27 snaps. As I mentioned, 21 of those were race car nickel. He was out in some other packages as well where Board was the only inside linebacker. I think it makes sense to focus his snaps and get him a reduced workload, which is more. We'll keep him fresher for starters, but we'll also focus him maybe on downs where the opponent is less likely to pass. And he can do some good things with his sideline-to-sideline speed against the run, maybe with some gap gambling if they can get that going more to be more effective against the run, but not as much where he'll be a focus and a target in the middle of the field.
He was inconsistent in this game. He had some really good plays. He had some not so good plays. I guess what you expect from a rookie that only started for half a season in college. He had a little bit of trouble taking on blocks early in the game. Later on, he was making some big stops in the hole in the run game. The fingertip interception, I think we should touch on that. That's a pretty special play. I don't know. There's a lot of linebackers that can pick the ball up, have the awareness, number one, and then just to pick the ball off the turf like that. I watched Ray Lewis play in Baltimore for a long time. I saw quite a few interceptions tip off his fingertips. I'm not sure Ray Lewis makes that play.
Yeah, Ray had some great ones too, some great diving stops, but a lot of Ray's ability was in handling the tip drill with himself.
Yeah,
getting the ball tipped up and where he could handle it. It was a great player in that respect, and we saw he actually tipped the ball to Sharper in Super Bowl 35. But he's a class apart. Queen does not have to be Ray Lewis, but I have used this analogy already. Queen's rookie year is not dissimilar to where Ray Lewis was as a rookie in 1996 in this way. Ray played only 67% of the snaps as a rookie. Queen is clearly giving every indication that a reduced role where he's off the field on passing downs is probably appropriate to try and get the opponent off the field. And the Ravens are reacting to that reality by having Board out there on a lot of third down plays. Ray Lewis, as a rookie, was replaced by the great, and I say that the way it is, Benny Thompson, who was a special teams ace and fourth safety on the team, who came in and played the quarter role, which is you know where the dime is, it plays next to the inside linebackers, and the quarter plays in place of that second inside linebacker. They played that 116 times in Ray Lewis's rookie year. And, it's okay that he would be playing less than full time right now. I know they need it to happen. He's obviously, didn't have the preparation that Ray Lewis had as a rookie with the nice long off season that was COVID free at that time. It's not unreasonable to expect Queen to not be a full-time player at this point.
Sure. Absolutely. I think the fact that he makes up for some of the mistakes with big plays, with splash plays. And if he can continue to do that, then I think you take the good with the bad and you continue to build into next year with hopefully mini camps and some other practice time to really get all the players up to speed.
Yeah, he's a player, with Miles Boykin, you want to get him on the jugs gun and do things. You want to get him working with the receiving coach that can give him position-specific skills. With Lamar Jackson, it came overnight, between his first and second year in terms of picking up all of those additional quarterbacking skills that would help him at the NFL level by working with somebody. How about a player like Patrick Queen? What sort of a regimen does he need for the time between year one and year two?
I think just reps. He's not necessarily as cerebral maybe as a player that has more reps. With the zone coverage, a lot, especially in this game, there were some plays where he was kind of caught in no man's land.
Yep.
And then some of the run plays, a little bit the misdirections, or maybe one or two of Elliott's cutbacks. He just didn't necessarily have that muscle memory to know exactly where to be, I guess.
Yeah, he does not read play action well. He doesn't guess well on play action is the way I'd put it. But the frustrating thing we've seen from Queen over and over again this year is him abandoning his zone responsibility. And, actually leaving his zone as if the guy he's covering through his zone is then a man coverage assignment.
I think we saw a play like that. I believe it was to the tight end, and it was a play action, and he left his zone to cover the back leaking out of the backfield in this game, if I recall.
All right. There's definitely one I saw with a shallow cross where they had overloaded that zone as well. But I thought that one was to a wide receiver. So we may be talking about two different plays, but
okay.
It wouldn't be surprising, by the way, if it happened more than once, because it certainly has so far this year. Folks out there think I'm hating on Patrick Queen. I really hope Patrick Queen is going to be a great linebacker. But if the only secret sauce to make this work is reps, it's going to be a slower trip to him being a Pro Bowl player than if there was some way to actively teach him zone concepts in a one-on-one setting over the off season. But it's almost like he needs to have maybe a bunch of high school players that he's playing with, or college players at Division III or something, whatever you got available to you. Let's just put it that way, who can play a zone defense along with him. And you effectively, end up hiring 12 people or 15 people or a 7-on-7 drill to get him functioning within a zone system.
I agree with you there. Not quite sure. Martindale is, and I've seen him at training camp working intensively, specifically with the inside backers, and that's one of his fortes. We'll see how it goes with Queen. He has all the physical ability, the natural ability that you want, and he's made how many strip sacks and interceptions and touchdown this year. So he's making plays, but he's not the Luke Kuechly. Doesn't make any mistakes inside linebacker yet.
There you go. All right. Well, your turn. You want to talk about other player?
Let's move on to Anthony Averett. Fortunately, he had a pretty tough game. Soft coverage throughout. And Harris, they seemed to be worried that they were going to get beat down the sideline pretty much on every pass. Which, hey, if that's what you're instructed to do, that's fine. I counted 2 missed tackles, I believe, in the fourth quarter. He did have a nice tackle on Cooper in pursuit, preventing a first down on a short crosser. And a pass defense in the end zone, but he also gave up 6 first downs into his coverage. So first came back in a while, and he's been a little bit up and down in his career, but this was not one of his better games.
No, it certainly wasn't. But, a lot of it I don't really blame on Averett as much of it's a natural kind of an outcome of the scheme, is that they want to go into a soft zone. You want to have Averett playing way off the line of scrimmage. You got to expect the opponent to try and take advantage of that. And they're also going to try and take advantage where they think they are not going to get beat by a guessing cornerback. So they're probably not going to go after Peters in that situation. If you're Dalton's, seen it happen. I guess Dalton was still with the Bengals last year when Ryan Finley threw the interception to Peters, right? Or was Dalton somewhere else? I'm trying to remember where Dalton was last year, but Ryan Finley was the starter for that game. I know that.
Was he hurt? I thought he was hurt last year, right?
Could be.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, Averett got picked on a little bit. I'm still hopeful that Averett can be a player. We've seen good things from him at times. He's certainly flashed enough. He's a year 3 cornerback. He cannot afford to let this game define his career, certainly. The Ravens don't want that to be the case, so I think he'll get playing time down the stretch based on where they are. I was a little surprised in this game that Davante Harris did not get more playing time. He was out there for 12 snaps, and it kind of makes me wonder, did he get hurt? I haven't heard anything, but I guess we'll find out from the first injury report tomorrow.
On first watch, it seemed that way. It seemed almost that Harris was pulled for Averett. And then on second watch, I did see Harris getting a few snaps later than I remember on the first go-round, but certainly possible. And do we know when Williams is supposed to come back from I guess it's a thigh / maybe hamstring, because it seems that they call hamstrings thighs now.
Yeah, they don't want to give away too much information. Boy, they're going to get like hockey pretty soon.
Who could guess that a thigh means hamstring?
Yeah. No, I actually don't know. I was looking at my score sheet here to see that Harris played his last snap in the middle of quarter 2.
Okay.
So and he played 9 special team snaps looking at the game book. So I think he might have left with some sort of a minor injury based on that. I would have thought he would have come back for at least a little more playing time, given how effective he was in his first game. And, some of the things they'd want to see. But he did, obviously he was in there only briefly. The thing I remember most about this game was him giving up the reception and then holding on by the shirt tail, but being able to make the tackle by that on one of the passes early.
He did make a pretty nice tackle on special teams. Looked like a hard collision. So who knows? Just speculating, but that may have something to do with it.
Yeah, I didn't see it on defense. So it makes a lot of sense from what you're saying. All right, I'm going to go with one more player. I'll talk about LJ Fort here. Outstanding game, I thought. He did so much in terms of being in the right place at the right time. But when you see LJ Fort, you see a player who really understands his coverage responsibilities and is usually able to execute them, although he does have some physical limitations. Otherwise, he'd be an all-pro, frankly, with the way he understands things. But he made a great move to come up on Elliott and take him down for a loss of 4 on a swing pass when he was really the guy who could make that play without it going for some significant yardage. He took him down for a loss of 4. Peters bid on a play action fake and was coming in to make a tackle on Elliott, showing that physicality that we don't always see from Marcus Peters. But Fort actually went over and covered the wheel route that he left for Elliott and picked it up beautifully and tipped the ball and out of bounds. We saw him make 2 plays down on the goal line where he was actually the primary tackler and Wolf got the assist of those. Now, we've mentioned that Brandon Williams was involved in blowing up those plays, but those are really good plays. I mean, they have only 2 linemen on the field. Somebody else has got to be a big body and make a sacrifice to get in there to beat those linemen, and Fort was the guy on those plays. And then, of course, one of the real oddball plays of the game is the Anthony Averett PD, which was a thing of beauty in its own right before he landed out of bounds. Knocked back inbounds. Fort apparently made the grab. It appeared to be a acrobatic diving interception, ruled out of bounds and not challenged. The whoever the rules guy they had, McCauley or whoever it was on this or Pereira seemed to think it was a pick.
It did look. I think he was out of bounds there, but regardless, Ford played well, very well. I thought he was going to intercept that wheel route. That looked like and he was going to take it the other way too, because he really jumped that route. No, he played very well. Couple tackles for loss. Great against the run. He only played 33 snaps, which I was a little bit surprised by, but they're working Harrison in, and I think Harrison has a lot of ability too, so I do like to see that. But very strong game. He's that, I guess, behind Clark. He's kind of that spine of the defense with just knows where to be, intelligent player, heady player, and just kind of like we had last year, 2019, when everything was going haywire, and they brought in Ford and Bynes, and everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah, that was a remarkable turnaround. We've never talked about this because Clark still hasn't missed a snap this season, thank goodness. But what would happen if Clark went down in terms of who gets the green dot on this team? I mean, they've got a couple of different options. My own personal opinion, I think it would be Elliott. Makes the most sense. He plays every snap already. He is a free safety. It means it's a little harder for him. But they did have the green dot with Weddle previously, so it kind of breaks the rule of a free safety doing it.
Yeah. I think Ford may be, Elliott's still kind of a little bit green at this point. But either way, Ford, he's a good, solid player to have. He's not your star player that's going to be making Pro Bowls and making flashy plays every time on the billboard downtown. But he's a very good player to have on the team.
Yeah, so if Fort were the guy to take over the helmet, what that would mean is he'd have to take over all the responsibilities that Board currently has. So he'd have to be that linebacker. He'd have to be a Mike linebacker effectively on the individual play. So actually, he could play the Will and Queen could play the Mike on early downs, and then Fort would have to stay on the field for third down. So it gets complicated, and I don't. Fort is really he'd be my second choice, but I think after it almost has to be him. Has to be Elliott as the next guy if anything were to happen. And then the team, boy, if they lost a safety at this point, they don't have anyone else. I mean, Geno Stone would have to be brought up and, learn under fire.
Very thin at safety, and I think that's why they're not using as much dime. I'm still waiting for Nigel Warrior to have a look because I was impressed by him scouting, and reports were good out of training camp. Safety. But I agree with you. Elliott does make a lot of sense. If that, knock on wood, let's hope that everybody stays healthy.
Yeah. We got two younger guys at safety now. Clark locked up for several years, but Elliott will be in his fourth year in his contract year next year. Pretty good chance, I would say, the Ravens draft a safety. And it doesn't just have to be to replace Elliott at free safety, or that could be the objective. I'd have been okay with McKinney or Delpit in this draft, both of whom are hurt now. But it's a position you want one more guy. Elliott has all the ability to come up and play dime. He also has all the ability to be either the starter or the backup if required next year. It would give the Ravens back the option of having a dime defense on the field, which I think they've really suffered having to play a linebacker effectively every snap. Yeah,
the dime defense it creates a lot of turnovers. It creates a lot of plays. If they do reach for a safety, or I shouldn't say reach, if they draft a safety early, and I wouldn't mind that at all, it does need to be, at least in my opinion, more of the true or the free safety variety as opposed to the strong safety. But we can dive more into that in the offseason.
Yeah, I think that would be the way they go. I think they've got the dimes they need right now on the team from what they have, but it is really that free safety they need. And if they're going to go in a high round, and who knows what picks the Ravens have in a high round coming up this year with the potential for COVID penalization. But if they go for a high round safety, if they go for a high round pick, after the first round, you often don't get the safety you want. Mm-hmm. A first round is a great round to get the top free safety.
There's only, how many true center fielders are there in the entire league? 5, 7?
Yeah.
There just really isn't that many. I like Delpit a lot coming out last year, and he hasn't played at all, so who knows? But it's a rare skill set. Not a whole lot of collegiate players have that center fielder ability.
No, absolutely true. And you can look no further than the fact that PFF had Stone ranked as their 53rd highest rated player. I think that's right. But they really liked his free safety ability, to know that free safety pool is not really all that deep. That you're really talking about, what it really comes down to is there's so many guys who really fill that dime role, that they're outstanding, move all over the field, make plays. But most of them are really more comfortable running downhill towards the line of scrimmage and not really understanding what all the route combinations are and playing the back end.
Oh, for sure. Adams in Seattle does like that. Even Hooker from Indy, who was one of the better center fielders to come out in quite a while, and he's been injury ravaged his entire career so far.
All right. We got some mailbag questions here. Let's go through them, Vas, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First question from Patrick Manley. Why do you think the Ravens have been so reluctant to activate Jihad Ward earlier this season? When he's in, it seems like he makes plays around the ball as much as anyone. I'll let you go first on a lot of these because I'm going to be searching for the next question as we go.
I think it's just a numbers game. They had Bowser, Judon, Ngakoue, McPhee, Ferguson. There's quite a few guys that play that similar position, and Ward is kind of the low man on the totem pole, I suppose. But maybe after this game, he will earn some more time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's made the decision difficult in terms of whether it's him or maybe Ferguson who gets deactivated this next guy. But they have 6 outside linebackers to make 5. So I don't think they can activate all 6. Just the way the roster is constructed and how they need to have players available to play special teams, and more importantly, perhaps have players available for the secondary. They really need to make sure that they have no more than 5 outside linebackers. And they've been doing that pretty consistently when they've had 5 guys healthy and not on a COVID list or hurt. All right, let's see. There's a lot of questions this week, and we'll dive into this one since we've got a kind of a thin mailbag here. But Tristan Colon Castillo, there seems to be a tremendous amount of questioning around why he wouldn't have been active and stayed at center after playing so well in the previous game against Pittsburgh.
Well, one game, right? One game. He doesn't have the experience of McCarty. I don't think that Colon Castillo, I think he could be a good player down the future. He could beat out McCarty or Skura potentially in training camp, but he's going to have to earn it. And you're not going to play one game and then Now you're active. All three are undrafted players. But obviously you take the more experienced guy, especially when your right guard only has 2 or 3 starts and you're rotating 2 different players at right tackle and your quarterback's coming back off of COVID. I think that you want the stability of someone with experience at that point.
Yeah, for what it's worth, McCary had his best game as a pro this last week. He had a split game where he was an A+ and a B+. This game was a high A. In terms of his play against the Cowboys, really doing a great job in the middle of that offense. A lot of good double teaming and getting push on his guy. Did not see as much of the arm length issues in terms of missed blocks. So I understand some of the questioning about Colon Castillo. It's obviously quite a feat, quite an honor, I guess, that the Ravens, with all the roster crunch they have right now, are keeping him on the 53 and not sending him back to the practice squad because they can't fit him in the 8-man group to be activated for game day. That group is going to get more crowded with Will Holden coming back, and the teams need to keep tackle depth when that position has been in a little bit of flux. So I'm not as shocked by it. Also wasn't quite as high as everybody else seems to be on how he played in the first game. He had one of the problems was he had a false start that I think he caused and got charged to Bredesen when he snapped the ball late. All right. Well, Vas, terrific to have you on as always, my friend. Anything you'd like to plug on the show?
So I am at Baltimore Beatdown, part of the SB Nation community. My Twitter is at Vasilis Beatdown, Vasilis Beatdown. And we are going to record one of our podcasts, myself and fellow editor Kyle Barber. We do a quarterly podcast. We're both a little bit busy this year, but we do kind of a macro look at the Ravens season. And now that we've reached the 3-quarter poll, it's called Host, Chief, and Deputy. Our friend Jake Luke is the producer. He serves the Josh role, so to speak, in this podcast. And we're going to record that later this week. So tune into the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast Network to check out our thoughts.
All right. Looking forward to that. We'll take a listen. I haven't talked to Kyle in a long time. Send my best to him. So I haven't heard from him in a while.
Will do.
Josh is out today. He's got some sickness that he's working his way through. He wanted to make sure we plug the Situation Room, which is out there on Filmstudy Baltimore. There are good episodes of that out there with Jordan and Gabe talking football, usually right after the games. Look for our schedule coming up during the week will be normal. Normal as far as a Tuesday night game goes, that we have the defense article out, the offensive line article will be out the day after tomorrow, and we'll have a series of 4 podcasts coming out with the defense tomorrow, followed by Know Your Foe. We got a great guest plan for that from the Browns, Jake Burns. And then on the following day, which I always lose track of days in this Tuesday week, but we'll have By the Numbers, and that's with Dan Reese. Thanks again for joining us, Vas.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.